Fast forward.
How do you feel? Good? Oh, come on. This is the only time you can shout in the oldest theater in Leicester. So I'm going to ask you again. How do you feel? Good? Yes. Okay. Shall we start? So my job as a designer took me to unexpected places, like learning about ikebana, the Japanese flower arrangement, or some robots animations. But today, I want to talk about my Toy Story versus the big bad plastic. Once upon a time, I always wanted to start a talk with once upon a time, you know. So, once upon a time, in South London, I was heading to a playground with my little 2-year-old son. If you don't know such a place, don't go. Imagine hundreds of kids running around, bouncing, shouting, crying, while their quiet parents are staring at their blue screens. So as I was taking my son out of his pram, I realized that I had forgotten again the toys, once again. And luckily, he ran in the sandpit and started to grab some random bucket and spade. If the little owner was around, it would end in a classic mine, little argument. Then the parent will come and say, hey, Charlie, be nice, share your toys with this little girl. The science says the opposite. Kids are not wired to share yet. This feature will be implemented in their operating system later on. So, while we were playing, I looked at all the abandoned and sad toys, most of them broken and made out of cheap plastic. So my designer brain started to notice a problem to which I had to find a solution. The bucket was too heavy, and even the spade was too big for his hands. So I had a crazy idea. What if I just could design my own toys, starting with a little ugly spade? So the day after, at breakfast, we were playing with some Play-Doh, and the one I use can be hardened in the oven. I even reinforce the handle with some ice cream sticks. And I had a lot this summer, thanks to my hungry caterpillar boy. Anyway, then I applied what I've learned during my years at Apple. You take a sheet of paper, draw a vertical line in the middle. On the left-hand side, you title that constraints, and on the right-hand side, possibilities. And as you just see, it takes a lot of trials and errors to find any good solution. Anyway, that day, I was thinking about, one of the golden rules in the toys industry. It's called the play value. In short, it's the time your kid is playing with a toy. It doesn't sound really sexy, but you had to understand it, okay? So the thing is, if you take Lego, for example, the play value is really high because you can create almost anything. Look at this picture. Is it a train? Is it a circus caravan? Where's the driver? Isn't that cute? Anyway, the play value is really, really high for that. So let's go back for a second to our infamous bucket and spade and see what the play value is. The bucket. For kids under 6, it's too heavy. And kids barely manage to create a sandcastle on their own. The handle will break. So the play value for that age group, quite low. Then you have the spade. Initially, it was a tool made out of a wood and a piece of metal. Well, if you remember the little mine argument, it would be a disaster to design such weapon. Here's what I found in a sandpit. Well, you barely see it. That's a crazy little, with legs, spade. Who the heck designed that? And this is an utensil, a garden utensil, very expensive. Why you abandoned that toys? Or even a longer spade. So the play value is quite low. Then you have the rake. Have you ever seen a kid playing with a rake? I really want to meet the designer of such toy. Because if you think that my boy will become a Zen garden master drawing some concentric circles, you're wrong. Then sometimes, in some bucket and spade sets, you have these little molds, you know, like the one in the shape of a seahorse. Kids, give it a try. Barely recognize the shape, and throw it. Just because sand is not great with finesse. And to finish, we have the sand filter, the sieve. And once again, if you think that kids are gold diggers, you're wrong. The only thing they will find in a city sandpit, for example, are cigarette butts and bottle caps. And by the way, they design it with 2 holes, one for the spade, one for the rake. That ruins the efficiency. So again, really, really low play value. So now you have a list of constraints, and you have done your play value research for each toy. So sticking with our design thinking process, you have to go through 3 stages of knowledge. So very simple to remember. The first one, the lowest one, you don't know what you don't know. In my case, I knew nothing about industrial design or materials. And by luck, because when you're an entrepreneur, you have to provoke the luck. I met these 2 guys who run a fantastic design studio. And together, we started to imagine definitely better sand toys. And thanks, Boris and Ian, I feel like I'm at the Oscars, you know? And together, they brought me to the second stage of knowledge. So that was, you don't know what you don't know. They brought me to the second stage, that is, you know what you don't know. While I was doing some research, I was listening to a design podcast called 99% Invisible, and a fantastic podcast, by the way. And I found my mentor. Sadly, I won't be able to thank him because this guy lived in the 19th century. And his name is Frederick Froebel. Nice picture. You see the picture? Yeah, nice picture. And he's the reason why that day I was playing in a sandpit with my son, because he invented the kindergarten. And he had an influence on millions of kids in Germany, but also in the US. So his previous invention is a common word in German, and it's called the Froebel gifts. In short, they are play material for kids, and so you can start by giving a woolen ball to a 6-week-old baby. That's the first gift. So she can squeeze it and discover the softness of the material. But later, you can give them a wooden ball, some cubes, some cylinders, and so on. So this is really, really great stuff. So let's recap for a second. You have now a list of constraints, a lot of possibilities. You have done some user tests, you get some feedback, and you think that you have reached the final stage of knowledge. You know what you know. So we worked hard in the studio to take into considerations the Froebel gifts. I'm really proud that we found more than 12 activities with our sand toys. And in comparison, doesn't work anymore? Yeah. In comparison, the classic set has only half of them. But also because we took all these fragile gifts into consideration, we reduced the plastic waste. So you're now in this confidence zone. You know what you know. But as a new product designer, I should know a little bit more about materials. So let's go back a little bit in the time. A long time ago, the spade was, initially, a tool made out of wood and metal. We already know that it's not great for that age group. So I did some research with bamboo, kind of trendy at the moment. Unfortunately, when it breaks, it's dangerous too. The only wood you can use is the beech tree. Kind of difficult for a French to say, beech tree, because it has no splinters. So I had to come back, unfortunately, to the big bad plastic. It is, the baddie, you know? There's always a baddie in a good story. So while I was walking into a toy shop to do some competitors' analysis, I found a lovely, beautiful frisbee made out of seaweed. And that day, I discovered the bioplastic. And that's great, you know. But when I started to investigate it, I was so excited. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. So I came back to the studio and I started to talk about this idea. You know, this is it. This is my aha moment. I found the perfect material. I was wrong. Jake, one of the designers, told me that he just read an article about the complexity of recycling bioplastics. And I made a funny face that day. Oh dear, recycling? Did you just say recycling? Okay, back to phase 2. I knew nothing about recycling. So back to research. Unfortunately, we barely recycle our plastic waste. 9%, only 9%. 10% is burned to make energy. So roughly, we have 80% that will finish into landfills, into our rivers and oceans. So that day, I had the feeling that it was over. I mean, the end of a kind of cool project. And I have started so many side projects, ask my wife. And most of them end up in nothing. It's okay, it's all right. But for this one, I really wanted to go further. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I was literally obsessed. And thanks to serendipity, very difficult word to translate into another language, by the way, serendipity, I read something about something very new. The environmental activists, Parley and Adidas, teamed up to make ocean plastic trainers. Ocean plastic. I asked myself, what the heck is ocean plastic? So I read a lot, and I discovered that you can also call it social plastic. So think about it with 3 C's. Collect, converge, and communities. So people around the world will collect plastic waste, converge to a place where you can sell it, and make some income to improve their communities. I fell in love with the ocean plastic, obviously. And I just thought, like, could my project be part of a recycle scheme? Yes. But that's enough. You know, 9% is not enough. So, again, thanks to Lady Serendipity, I came across a company called Rapanui. It's a UK company. And I discovered the circular economy. And if you think about them, they create t-shirts in a very sustainable way. So for example, if your t-shirt is damaged, you can send it back for free to them, and they will give you credit for your next purchase. And that's cool. This is exactly what I do with my toy brand, Chapito. Because thanks to MacArthur Foundation, this is it. This is the principle of the circular economy. So the story, you have now a purpose, a good play value, and an ocean plastic material with a circular approach. That project could go on. But the story doesn't end here. There was this kid coming from India to do an internship at the design studio. And after 2 weeks, as we were heading to have a team lunch, he talked about a crazy idea he just had. He already contacted his mate, and together, because his mate, ran a charity in India to clean the beaches, and together they want to create ocean plastic sunglasses and sell it back to the tourists. So, I have a question for you today. What is your crazy idea? And what problem you're gonna solve? Thank you.
Fast forward.